Okay, so you've got your table. What next? There's a couple of things that you can do to make these things more interesting. Now, I've got, like you said, it looks like a patio table. So maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to get rid of that and make it a little bit fancier. So in order to get rid of things, I can just Alt-right click, and it should, but it didn't, go all the way around. I'm not quite sure why it didn't here, but there we go. Now I got all those. Now, one of the things about the mirror modifier is you can't actually like move it away. So like I can't take this cross section and now move it out. How did you guys get selected there? That's frustrating. So I can't actively like move it left or right like this. So what I have to do is either turn off clipping, okay, and then move things out away from the center, or the easiest thing to do is just keep clipping on, and I'm just going to X delete my vertices. Now when I do that, I'm going to have a hole. So in order to fill the hole, it's pretty easy. You click on all 4 vertices, and to fill the hole, what key do you think I might type on the keyboard? Oh, very good, F. There we go, hit the F key. So now I can do the same thing here. Get all 4 of those, X, delete the vertices. Now I can fill them. Now, before I start doing too much else with this, you know, I could try and move this back a little bit because now it looks really weird, right? You know, one of the things that you can do is you can also play with the diameter of these cross sections. So if I Alt-right click, I can take this and I can hit the S key to scale them down so that I can, you know, make it a little skinnier, then make it a little thicker, move things around a little bit to create a more unique look. Bring that back more towards the center of the thing like that. It would be a lot easier if the legs had just been straight in the beginning. And then I can do another loop cut and slide here, take that, hit the S key, scale it down. Now, it kind of looks a little bizarre right now. What I might do is leave that, then do another loop cut here, bring that about there, scale that down, and then I might bring my faces out again like this. Well, you know, have fun with the design. I mean, this is about learning how to model in Blender. So yeah, it's going to look kind of unique. You can totally do whatever you want with it. In fact, I might even like take this and extrude, left click, bring it out a little bit, extrude, left click, bring that out a little bit. So you kind of have like a little notch. Actually, I don't really like that. Maybe I would take both of those and extrude them. There we go. So, you know, it's kind of looking like it's got its own style. It's, you know, definitely starting to look unique. Now, one other thing. So one of the things that we can do in the demo that I did for you previously, I beveled the edge of the table. Now, there's 2 problems with this. One, you can kind of see how this face is a quad, but you'll see it's creasing really odd. And you can see that over here. What it really wants is it wants an edge down the middle. Sometimes you'll see that with vertices and faces, where if you're doing something like I'm doing right here, it really wants an edge down the middle. So there's a couple of ways to do this, and none of them are really wrong at all. What I would probably do, honestly, the easiest is to merge these points to the center one. So you can do it one at a time or 2 at a time. So you click the first one, then the second one, then you hit Alt-M at last. Or you can actually do that with all of them. So click 1, 2, then the last one where you want them to be, right click. I held the Shift key down too, just in case you forgot about that. Alt-M, and then at last. And now it merges all those points down together, and now the bevel is going to look a lot better. In fact, to be honest with you, I would probably do it here as well. Alt-M at last. And now you can see how the corner of the table is going to just be a little bit more natural. And if we go over here to our mirrored section, you can see how the corner looks a lot more natural. Now, if I wanted it to be an even smoother bevel, so for instance, round, a real fun thing to play with is another modifier called the subdivision surface modifier. And the subdivision surface modifier basically subdivides and smooths out your object. What does subdivide mean? Subdivide means makes it into more faces. So if I hit select all here like this and I hit subdivide, which is a button right here on the tools on the left, you can see every time I click it makes more faces, and it can get really complicated. The problem with this is now this is really hard to edit. If I wanted to make changes to it, I can't do so very easily because the more vertices you have, the harder it is to edit. So instead of doing that, you can actually take and add a subdivision surface modifier, which essentially does the same thing. Now, it also smooths out your object and makes it rounder, which you may or may not want in certain areas. So we can also control this through what we call edge creasing. So if I want this to have a sharp edge, especially say around the table where the leg meets the table and also at the bottom, I can control that. In fact, let's do that with the bottom because it's a great illustrator. I select all my edges. I can go to Mesh, Edges, and then Edge Crease, or go to Shift E. And I like doing that better because it's good to start your mouse close to the center of the object. Shift E, and then as you move the mouse away from the center of the object, it will crease those objects more and more and more. All the way to the right, and it gets sharp. Somewhere in between, and it's a little bit rounded. And if you can look down in the bottom left-hand corner, right around over here, see that? It says crease +1. That's the maximum. So it's anywhere from 0 to +1. Or -1 if you've got a crease and you're undoing the crease, it will go to -1. So I might want something that has a little bit of a bevel to it, so I'm going to go 0.8. And then if it's not exactly what I want, I can actually go in here and type right after I do that. And now you can see how that looks a lot better. I can go up here. Sometimes you want to do it and you can't see the actual edges that you want. Just turn a little eyeball off over on the modifier here. Go ahead and select your edges. Then I like to turn it back on so I can see exactly how much I'm creasing the edge, and Shift E again, and I can make it really sharp, or I can make it kind of blend in. And the difference between those two is actually really important. If it's a very sharp edge like this, it's kind of sort of signifying that those are made of two different pieces of wood. If it's blended like this and has a little bit of a more smooth transition, it's kind of sort of signifying that the object is made out of one piece of well, I shouldn't say wood, it could be metal, whatever. And that is important when you're building an object to think about, well, am I communicating that this is one piece or two pieces, or how am I doing that? And we could build it out of multiple pieces, which sometimes is easier, but for the purposes of this project, we're not going to. We're just going to make a wooden table. But that is important to kind of think about, hey, how do I want this to kind of appear? And then I might do the same here on the inside. And again, I can't see that edge, so I'm going to click on it. And I probably want all of these to be the same. So I'm just going to come around here and grab all these edges here with the Shift key and right-clicking. Now I'm going to turn it back on and Shift E to start doing an edge crease. Now that looks pretty darn good. However, notice something happened here, and this is another really important thing, and we can do this up top on the edge of the table too. If you'll notice, if I zoom in, this is still pretty rounded here, and so are these corners. So if I want to control the corners here, and I want to do them all for them at once so that they are equal, like that, Shift E, and now if I make the edge crease really high, you can see how the corners kind of come together. If I don't, I can kind of bring something that looks a little bit like that. That looks pretty good. And then I can do the same thing with this corner if I wanted to, Shift E, and I can crease it or leave it alone. So up here along the top, what I might want to do is have a sharper bottom, but then I have that bevel that I built on the top part. See that? And if I want rounded corners, I'll leave it, and if I don't, I'll crease this too. And I can make it a sharp or a slightly rounded table like that, which I think makes sense. And you can kind of see what's happening. I might even crease this top part just a little bit to bring that edge a little bit more forward, and you can kind of see how that's affecting how that corner looks. And then if I did that, I might actually take this down. So to take one down, you Shift E, you keep your mouse away from the center of the object or the center of the edge that you've selected, hit Shift E, and then you bring your mouse towards the center, and you can see how that reduces the amount of edge creasing that you've got. Okay? And now I've got myself a much smoother and easier to kind of identify table than a big blob, but I've also got something that looks pretty smooth. And you can control how much you see of this. If the computer starts to jitter and slow down, the frame rate as you're rotating starts to go down, you've probably got this set up too high. I recommend 3 or 4 and having render set to 6. 6 is like the ultimate smoothness, and that's when we make our final movies, it'll look like that. But that looks pretty darn good. You know, and we can, again, you can start playing with it a little bit more. Notice I didn't crease these little things here, these cross sections, because I wanted it to be smooth and kind of fill in. If I didn't, then I would crease them, and you might have a hard angle there. It may or may not look good. And you can just keep loop cutting and sliding and scaling things if you wanted to make things look, you know, that looks pretty hideous, actually. All right, but I've actually seen tables somewhat similar to that. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world. I don't like it. I'm going to undo it. But you get the idea. Okay, so this is how you can control your table. Make it look more unique, make it look smoother, and have complete control over exactly what you want it to look like. You know, let's say, for instance, I wanted these cross sections to be square. I wouldn't crease this, but I could crease these 4 here. And now you can see how that kind of looks, okay? And I think it looks pretty bad, so I'm going to undo it yet again. And you can just keep doing that and playing with things. And if you do edge crease something and then 3 days later you decide you don't want it, you can do what I just showed you, which is where you Shift E, put your mouse away from the center, bring it towards the center. And actually, let's just do that. So Shift E, there it is, fully creased. 3 days later, I decide, hey, I don't like it. So I'm going to select them again, Shift E, and I'll go towards it. And it will go to, like, usually very close to -1, but not fully. And then so I'll actually go in here and I'll type -1, just to make sure that there's no creasing whatsoever on those edges at all. And now the table is back to the way I want it. Does this make sense? Cool.